Rob Draper, chief football writer for the Mail on Sunday, joins us now. Rob, appreciate your time and good evening.
Good evening, Jason. Good evening, Darren.
Good evening.
Rob, so many questions. I want to try and make this as like an idiot's guide as to what's going on, because I've got to be honest with you, there's a lot of this I can't quite get my head round. So my first question is quite a simple one. What did Everton do wrong that they deserved 10 points, and why 10 points deduction?
Well, essentially, they've overspent, haven't they, on the rules? You're allowed to get to £105 million losses, and they got to 124 million. But I think the issue was that the Premier League were in clearly, if you read the full reading, the Premier League were in conversations with them over 2.5 years, even to the point of saying when they were signing players in transfer windows, you do realise that this is going to put you in risk of your profit and sustainability regulations. And Everton went ahead and kept signing players. Everton thought they had a get out, and that they thought they could argue, well, COVID came along and we would have sold player X for 80 million. I mean, Richarlison was one of the players named. We would have sold him for 80 million and we had to sell him for 60 million. And they also made exemptions. For example, there's a levy every time you do a transfer that goes towards youth football. That happens with any transfer. And they said, oh, well, we can write those things off. But of course, every other club was having to deal with COVID. Every other club was paying this levy and wasn't writing it off. So it always seemed a little bit unlikely that those things would wash. I think Everton knew they were heading for financial rocks. The Premier League kept trying to warn them. And so eventually, obviously, when the rubber hit the road and the Premier League charged that there wasn't a lot of mitigation, there wasn't a lot of Premier League saying, well, yeah, okay, it's just £20 million. It's like, well, no, you broke the rules and you got a material advantage against the other teams. The teams that went down, you were able to sign good players, which might have been worth 2 or 3 points, which might have saved you from going down.
But why 10 points seems quite draconian? It seems a huge amount. Why 10? Why not 6?
Yeah, I mean, I think people were thinking, well, maybe this might be 4 to 6. I mean, really, that's a Premier League commission. They can do what they want. They're an independent commission. You know, they have the scope to go. They obviously felt that the offence was bad enough. Now, I would say that obviously, had they got the 10-point deduction last season, which is what the Premier League wanted, they wanted to rush this through. And it was decided, no, you can't do that. It would be an independent commission decided that would be too quick. They would have gone down with that. And in fact, this season, with a 10-point deduction, it probably, there's a good chance they'll stay up. I actually think the 10 points is kind of the least of their problems. It's the compensation claims, right, which are now the sting in a tail. That could ruin Everton for the next 2 to 3 years. Okay.
And just on the back of that, how honest were Everton with the Premier League? I've heard a number of people speaking about this, saying that the Everton Football Club weren't completely honest in this, and they tried to mislead. Therefore, that's another reason why this could have been such a heavy point fine.
There's a very complicated section whereby they try to offlay some of the interest charges that were on the stadium and say, well, actually, this is stadium spending, and the Premier League have a long, convoluted argument with them about that. And the Premier League did say they weren't completely frank. That said, in the judgment, it also says they weren't dishonest. So it was more, and I think Everton explained it this way in their statements, like when you're doing a tax return, obviously you do the absolute best to pay the least tax possible, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're dishonest. You might get it wrong, you might misunderstand the rule, but that's not the same as tax evasion. And I think it was in that realm that Everton that the Premier League said, well, they weren't completely frank with us all the time.
Rob, you briefly mentioned it. That what will the ramifications be of this in terms of we've seen Leicester, Burnley, Leeds all looking to potentially sue for large sums of money. Is this likely to happen? And they're talking maybe another points deduction for Everton if being placed in administration after that.
Yeah, well, it will almost certainly happen because I think almost the most significant ruling yesterday was the Premier League Commission said that those clubs now have 28 days to lodge their compensation claims. And why would they not? I mean, there's a couple of clubs that wouldn't have, that were not, I think Norwich and Watford are so far adrift that they probably won't lodge compensation claims. But obviously clubs that feel that they were affected are going to lodge compensation claims. And then the ramifications are huge. I mean, what we always say, don't we? Oh, it's worth 100 million sort of being in the Premier League. I mean, it's probably worth more than that, to be honest. But I mean, if each club gets £100 million in compensation, that would be completely unsustainable. So I don't know how a Premier League commission will weigh that. I mean, you couldn't suddenly say to Everton, we'll write a cheque for 300, 400 million to these clubs, and clearly it would have to be spread over time. But even so, that amount would just weigh any club down, that you would end up either in administration, or no player's going to want to go to Everton if they're saddled with those kind of debts. So I think their problems are going to come in the next transfer windows. With this uncertainty, no agent is going to put their player into Everton at the
moment. What does this mean for clubs such as Manchester City and Chelsea? And I say those two because they have their charges against them. Will they start getting concerns now? Absolutely.
Man City have charges. Chelsea have admitted some liabilities, which they've cleared up. But clearly this week we saw, didn't we, some accusations seemingly backed up with documents in the Guardian newspaper that they had avoided FFP regulations by channeling money through Cyprus bank accounts of Roman Abramovich. The club emphasised that was a previous regime, and we've not heard from Abramovich. We haven't heard any denials or confirmation of that. So that's just to clear that up legally. But yeah, I think there will be shudders through Manchester City. Because if you think they have 115 charges over 9 years, this is a few charges over a couple of years. And the Premier League do acknowledge, whilst not being frank, as we said, that Everton did cooperate. Manchester City are charged with not cooperating and not giving the right information. I mean, if this is the metric, if it's 10 points for what Everton did, who knows? I mean, Manchester City's offence is going to lead to relegation. It's either going to be a default relegation, or they're going to get minus 60 point deduction or something extraordinary.
And just going back to Everton, they have a right to appeal. Why wouldn't they, of course? There's a chance they may even get those points reduced slightly. How long do you expect that process to last? Because these things can take time.
They can take long, but the Premier League have moved, I think because of the Manchester City case, they have moved to make sure these things are tidied up. So I'd have to go back and read the small print, but I'm pretty sure that all has to be tidied up by the end of the season, because otherwise these things drag on, and you're trying to rewrite this. Even now, it's not ideal, is it, that we're dealing with it this season when it relates to last season. You don't want to be running on into sort of 24, 25 and dealing with the 23, 24 season. So I think that will be wrapped up by the end of the season. They are appealing. They might get a 6 point. One might expect that an appeal might take a couple of points off that. I don't think their issue is this season, to be honest, given that the promoted sides are doing so badly. I think they can make up. They're only second bottom.
Well, they'll be out the bottom three by Christmas, I reckon.
Well, yeah, they could be out of the bottom three, I think. Which I'm sure they will do, given the way Goodison is for a Man United game. With this kind of everyone's against us atmosphere, it's in some senses a chance for Sean Dyche to just refocus the club.
Yeah, I mean, just a quick one on the players themselves, being an ex-player. Will there be any direct impact on the players on this, or will they just be getting on with their job on the field?
I think Dyche was going to use this, isn't it, to say, look, everyone's against us, you show them. And Wayne Rooney sort of showed that a little bit at Derby, although they didn't manage to pull off the miracle, did they? They did pretty well. And I think you can use it as a short-term sort of kind of like team bonding exercise. And I think you'll see Everton do pretty well. Equally, Everton have been playing well. So as long as they can absorb that psychological blow, and Sean Dyche is probably one of the best managers at managing that situation, there's no reason why with their current form they can't be sort of out of the relegation zone very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine there's huge pressure now on the Premier League to make an example of the other clubs that we mentioned. I mean, they're in a difficult situation now.
This is the thing. I mean, the Premier League would say this is an independent commission. It's nothing to do with us, obviously. We have to say that. But in our eyes, in the public, we'll just think it's the Premier League, don't we? And it is. It's a commission appointed by the Premier League, but of independent people. But yeah, the pressure on there's a government regulator coming around the corner, and you suspect, again, we must stress these people are independent, but that must play a factor in the back of people's minds that if they're seen to be weak on these clubs, then the government regulator will probably come and step in the next couple of years. The Man City case is the case that could blow apart the Premier League English football that could change English football forever. You can't stress enough how massive that case is. This is pretty big, and the ramifications will go on, I think, in terms of compensation for another 2 or 3 years and affect Everton for a long time. But Manchester City, boy, oh boy, I mean, if those charges are proven, we're in for a cataclysmic shock to English football.
And sorry, just on that, there'll be City fans listening to this, and I'm guessing, in fact, every footballer. Do we know when we can expect that to find a conclusion or not, or is because there's 115, there are so many that the timescale is just literally vast?
Yeah, absolutely not, because I've done my best over the last, with all these cases, to try and get any hints of when they're going to come to conclusion. And the finest legal people who aren't involved, and people you try and talk to who are involved, no one will talk about it. The legal guys say it could take forever, and there's so many charges. And as we know, because in the leaked emails, Man City said their strategy would be to fight it tooth and nail, and they've done that every step of the way. They will be disputed, every single dot, semicolon, full stop of those charges.
Okay, Rob, listen, thank you very much for your time. When do your Christmas decorations go up?
Not yet. It's a bit bare in my office, I have to say. I need to find something.
I just wondered because a lot of people are putting them. Listen, Rob, appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. What's left of it. Top man.
Take care. All the best, guys. Cheers, thanks a lot.
The brilliant Rob Draper there, chief football writer for the Mail on Sunday. Looking back on what it seems a very harsh penalty, 10 points. For what, 19.5 million it was. But them's the rules, and they've come down hard. And just listening to him there, that Manchester City one, I mean, his cataclysmic, I think, was a word that he used there. You don't use that word lightly.
I mean, it's scary to think, actually. If you see the punishment Everton got, and as he said, a few years it's been going on, 10 points, not many charges, and 115 Man City, 9 years been going on. Yeah. It's scary to think about the ramifications, not only the punishments, but the fine. If you think of those 3 clubs mentioned, Leicester, Leeds and Burnley, looking to sue, can you imagine what this would do to Man City in terms of Europe, in terms of the Premier League?
I don't know.
It's a scary thought.
Well, because my club's involved as well. Chelsea haven't been charged. That's I think they opened the book, said, look, here's what we found. But of course, that will be down to the Premier League, no doubt. This is definitely not the last we've heard of